Hello, fifth graders. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come watch this video. That we're going to be talking about the slave trade here, and I'm going to be going through your notes. Um, with the slave trade, it started with the English people. And we talk about the English because remember, the 13 colonies are owned by England. So at the beginning, the English people believed that anybody that was not a Christian, Christians are a religious group that believe in Christianity, and they said if you weren't a Christian, you could become enslaved. It had nothing to do with where you came from, what color skin you have, what your race was, anything like that. It was just if you were not Christian, you could be enslaved. You could become a slave. But if you switched to becoming a Christian, then you could get out of slavery. So that's what that first paragraph is talking about there. The next one, the Atlantic slave trade. The Atlantic slave trade is the transporting of people from Africa to the Americas. So bringing them across the Atlantic Ocean. That's why it's called the Atlantic slave trade. Many slaves were brought to North America, but more were brought down to Brazil and the Caribbean islands. And I'm going to show you if I can find the right page on this map. So I'm hoping you can see this. So we're talking about Brazil and the Caribbean. And here you can see is North America. And the Caribbean are these islands down here. So these are where a lot of slaves are brought down here. And then also to Brazil. A lot of slaves are brought down to Brazil. And Brazil here's a map of the world. Here's South America. I gotta go this way. Brazil is this yellow country right here in South America. So more slaves were brought there than to North America. But slavery did exist in the colonies. Massachusetts Bay became the first one to colonize, or to the first colony to legalize slavery, and eventually took a little over 100 years. Slavery became legal in all 13 colonies, with Georgia being the last one to legalize it. Colonists believed that slavery was essential. That word essential means very important in order for their colonial economies to grow. So that word economy refers to like money, being able to make money, jobs, things like that. And since they felt it was so important, more people wanted slaves. And because there are more demand for slaves, that means more people are going to be kidnapped from Africa and brought over to the colonies. One of the vocab words from the lesson you read was the slave codes. Slave codes were the laws of slavery. So they said what could and couldn't be done during slavery. And basically, they said people brought from Africa, they had no rights. They were considered property, something to be bought and sold. And they changed the rules that said it doesn't matter if you're Christian or not, you're a slave. You could change to Christianity, which we call convert. You can convert to Christianity, but it didn't matter. That wouldn't get you out of being a slave. If you had kids, if slaves had kids, those kids would now become slaves too. This first one here, the work done by enslaved Africans really depended on the colony they lived in. Some of the jobs you would find would be them being carpenters, so working with wood, blacksmith, making things like horseshoes, nails, helping with that, being cooks, weavers, so making clothes, blankets, working in the fields, like as field hands. You can see in this picture here, they're helping harvesting some crop, or they would work in the home. So it really depended what their owner wanted them to do. Out of all the colonies, slaves were more common in the South. Because of the large farms and the plantations that were in the South, they had a higher demand for slaves. So that's why that's why we saw more slaves in the southern parts, because the demand was higher, especially with like tobacco plantations, rice, anything like that, cotton. They needed a lot of workers to harvest those crops. The slave ships, though, that went over to Africa and brought them back, they were owned by people in the north. So in the north, they had a lot of slaves that worked in the shipyards, building the ships, working on the ships, things like that. So even though more slaves were located in the southern part of the colonies, slavery was unfortunately something that was spread throughout. One thing you did read in the text was the slave codes made it illegal for slaves to be able to write. They were worried that if slaves learned how to read and write, they would start having more demands for their freedom. They'd start understanding how they could fight back more. So they didn't want to give them that feeling that they could, gain knowledge through reading and writing. So because of that, they would tell stories to their children. And they told those stories for a couple of reasons. One is to teach about their past, let them know where they came from. And here you can see the map of Africa there. So they wanted them to teach about their past, where their families came from, and also to entertain. You have young children, as young children, you want to be entertained. So that's how adults did that. They told stories. They also created songs to sing while they were working, to help, again, working long hours. Sometimes you're in the field all day long, sun up to sundown, you're working. So they would they would sing to kind of help keep their spirits alive, and you'll stay happy. And they would also sing spirituals. Those are religious songs of enslaved Africans. I also posted a video called "The Drinking Gourd" on my Google Classroom page. So if you haven't watched that, please make sure you do. Now, not all slaves just sat back and said, "Oh, that's it. We can't do anything." Some found ways to fight back against their owners, and they did that through several ways. First one here you can see is they slowed their work. They're like, God, if we slow down, we work really slow, we won't be able to harvest much. That's one way of them fighting back, but sometimes that could get them in trouble. Others would maybe break or lose tools. That's another one way they fought back, or they would run away. The running away could also be very dangerous for them. If they don't get away to freedom, if they're recaptured, they could be whipped, beaten, things like that. So it was not a good situation for them if they were recaptured. So running away was very dangerous for them. And some chose to rebel using violence. So when you rebel, it means you're fighting back against your leaders, your rulers, in this case, their owners, and which could also get them in trouble. But they felt they had no choice. They did not want to live this life of slavery. So the only option they had was to fight back. So let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this helped you summarize the lesson on slavery in the colonies. And don't forget to get your assignment done. Have a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye.